My podcast is about like self-discovery and the personal growth by self-discovery, basically, because I
Hmm.
when most people don't know who they are. So yeah, it's my belief that the more we get to know ourselves, the more we can bring more of ourselves to the surface and the more of a purposeful life we can live. So that sounds pretty similar to some of the stuff that you're doing. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say I have a very similar philosophy. I mean, it's the same. I'm sure that we go about things a little bit differently, but like that was the key for me was, oh, if I know myself really well and learn how to love all of those parts of me in any given moment, I can recognize my own humanity and therefore recognize it in others, not because I need to excuse everyone's behavior, but because it no longer hurts my feelings, because I'm not taking things personally, because it's not about me, but also because then I'm more empowered to make decisions that are good for me based off what's happening. So yeah, I love that that's what your show's about. I love that that's the work that you're doing. That's my mission right now, is just to get as many people to understand that as possible.
Yeah, because it's like we're not taught this at school, are we?
We're not taught this anywhere. I mean, and like you look younger than me, so are you in your 20s?
I'm 38.
Okay, wow, dang. You do not look 38. But okay, so there's a potential that you were raised by a boomer, but that's the thing, is that anyone in that little generation, they were not equipped to teach us anything because they were not in touch with themselves.
Hmm.
And it was a completely emotionally devoid generation for so many reasons. And I can have compassion for their experience, but I'm having compassion for mine first by understanding the way that we were not nurtured or taught how to nurture ourselves, because we weren't even allowed to have a voice, or an experience. I mean, our experience did not matter. And so, yeah, I think that getting to a place where you understand the reason none of us know what we're doing really is because of that. That was like, I mean, and generations before that. I mean, the ancestral, this is kind of how it's been. And I think that's why people like you and I are so passionate about talking about this subject, is because, like, I don't know if you have kids, I do. And so much of this stuff that I didn't know impacted them in the most negative way, obviously. Like, that's an obvious statement. But having a 22-year-old and an almost 18-year-old, and then I have a 10-year-old, um, really highlighted where what I was missing and what I didn't give them. And so that's really where it all connects, is how do we make this better for future generations starting now?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do have kids as well, and I have a big age gap between my children. So my son, for instance, is 19 and my daughter is 8.
Mhm.
So yeah, I can see within my own journey the differences.
Yeah.
Just because of we all inherit beliefs from our parents, so of course we're also pushing them down as well, and you can see the clear differences in my son when it comes to sort of confidence and things like that. Just but more says more about me than anything else, because of course they look up to like we looked up to our parents, right? And we
Yeah.
inherited all those beliefs. So
Absolutely.
it's
Well,
really
and
important,
I
isn't it?
wonder, like, do you have this issue having kids so far apart? Because this is an issue that I have with my kids having such a gap, is because I was so drastically different those first couple, really the first and the last, because the middle one, he's really gotten a pretty tame version of me. But the oldest, I feel, and he's getting better at voicing it appropriately, but I feel the resentment and tension anytime I'm asking him to give allowance and grace to his sister in a way that he didn't get. Like, I'll be like, well, people are people, or let her be, or whatever. And he's like, where was that attitude when I was a kid? And I'm like, honey, you were born to a 22-year-old who had no clue what she was doing. Okay. And not I'm not saying I got a lot of clues now, but I got a little more of a clue, and being in touch with yourself allows you to sit with your kid in their discomfort. I couldn't handle his discomfort. I because it made me afraid and ashamed because, oh, this is a need I may not be able to meet. I knew it. I knew I wasn't going to be a good parent. You know what I mean? So like it stems and it just goes and branches out everywhere. And I just wonder if you like, is your son like, does he give you a little bit of that or no?
He's okay, to be honest. I think because
Really?
yeah, yeah, because like, you know, maybe because he's a son and she's a little girl, maybe
Yeah.
maybe it was a boy, two boys, it would be, look at it equally. But yeah, no, I think he understands that. And like I've sort of said to him as well, um, even though you as a parent are growing, you also your second time you get better at parenting, don't you? So there's that as well. It's like anything, it's kind of a skill, isn't it? And any skill, if you write one book, your second book's probably going to be better and your third book's going to be better because the repetition.
I don't know, man. I don't know. For if that was your experience, that is great. I just got more tired, brother. I got more tired with
Yeah, yeah,
each
of
one of
course.
them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want no more now. Like, yeah. We said one was enough, but then we forgot how hard it was.
That's what they do. That's what they do. They make you forget.
But I love what you said before, just before we started talking about the parenting side of it, where you talked about us as humans, we all don't really know what we're doing. I
Mm.
really like that because we're all a bit disorientated in our environment. And I think the reason for that is because we've been given the ability to create our own environment, haven't we? And
Yeah.
why we're a bit disorientated. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because I think if you take a human and you put them in a box and you say, you get to decorate this box with anything you want, and there's a bajillion supplies, that's the only guidance you're going to get, which is how I felt my entire life. With like, where's the blueprint? Can I get a little bit of direction? Um, yeah, I think I'm working really hard to create things that give you, I like to say, I like to give people direction and hope a little bit, not too much, because you got to leave room for interpretation and energetic cycles and all the things. I don't want anyone, I know that people who struggle with perfectionism, which is all of us, but even the sneaky kinds, you look to somebody for advice, and if you take their advice, you kind of want to take every last ounce of the advice, do it exactly as prescribed. And so I like to say, find your light and then share it with others. And so if you can get to a place where you know how to get through the day to day without maybe even, I was going to say 5 minutes wrecking your day, but because that used to be me, but like everything be going fine. And then, the worst 5 minutes of the day just defines the entire day. Like that's it. I knew it. Or now it can be a full 2 hours of some chaos that I just wasn't expecting or whatever. And then still get to the end of that day and be like, man, that was a good day. Because when you can learn how to work through conflict and see yourself in any room and know that none of the variables outside of you change who you are on the inside, that's the key. Like you are you again in any given moment. And if you can just stick to that and give yourself the love and compassion that most of us really do offer to other people, far more than some people even deserve.
Mm.
But if we can do that the way that we do it for others, well, then why would all of the chaos in the room matter that much? Because if it doesn't reflect you as a human or your worth and value, why does it matter that much? So that's kind of my philosophy.
Yeah, of course. And again, we're not taught this way, are we? We're taught
Oh.
to try and control external things, but the more we try and do that, the more frustrated inside I think we get because the more we realize we're actually out of control. And like you
Mhm.
said, it's got to start from the inside where you can literally self-regulate yourself and be okay with the chaos that's happening outside.
Yeah.
Um, because we can't really control it, to a degree, we can do
Most of it you
well,
can't. You
most
really
of it you
cannot.
can't. No,
Mhm.
you can I know myself sometimes, I've got emotionally you know, sort of charged about something, and then the situation hasn't changed, but the way I look at it has changed, and my energy's changed, and I think, what was I so emotionally charged about,
Mhm.
Again, that comes from self-awareness though, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, that's the thing is if you don't get to the point that you and I are at without asking yourself the hard questions every day, every single day. Because like I do a lot of shadow work in my membership, I that's the number one priority is shadow work because it wasn't until I started asking myself questions like how do you address the dissatisfaction in your life if you're the center of all the dissatisfaction? How are you responding to people when they don't meet your expectations? Things like that. It wasn't until I was really aware of how my thoughts started, where they led me to, and how that impacted my behavior because I was a very reactive person, very. So everything that came out of anyone else's mouth was a personal attack to me and I reacted as such. And understanding that if that's the lens I'm viewing the world through, well, I've set myself up for failure because I'm going to be hurt by everything and everyone I encounter. Whereas now, something I've really tried to teach my kids too lately is I envision like two ledges anytime there's something I have to get over. And I'm starting here, I'm gonna end here. The end result usually gonna be pretty similar no matter what you do. But that middle part, how you get from one ledge to the other, that's the part you get control over. And do I want to get there and be all like harried and just tense, bracing, guarded, not loving myself? No, I don't want to do that. I want to get there in with the most joy, the most peace, and the most love for myself that I could have in any of the time that I'm spending in the middle part. So it's the middle ground that we get all this control over. You don't get to control the outcome necessarily, and you don't get to control anyone's response to you. But when you work so hard on the middle and how you're doing the middle, none of that stuff really matters anymore because you do learn how to get validation from yourself just from doing the hard shit. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, exactly, because a lot of us are guilty of getting attached to the outcome. And therefore, when we do that, we're kind of measuring our self-worth by our results. So you see a
Yes.
lot of people kind of do that, and that causes frustration. And again, I think it comes down to this self-awareness. I will always go back to it.
Yeah.
A lot of my messaging is like empower yourself with self-awareness, because once you're self-aware, you're empowered. You understand what's happening. Like you said before, when people would say something to you and it felt like a personal attack, without being aware, you would have just reacted, as you say. But that
Hmm.
probably still happens to a degree now. But because you're now self-aware, you're probably like, oh, what's this sort of feeling? Where am I being triggered here? Do you know what I mean? It's asking the hard question
Absolutely.
and going,
Yes. Well,
where do
because
I
if you're not
say
aware,
that?
you don't even know what it feels like when it pops up, you
Mm,
know? Like I talk a lot about how we all have these physical responses to every emotion that you have. I know that I had them all day every day before. I certainly didn't know that I was having them. So like no wonder I had all this pain and tension in my neck, back and shoulders at all times because that's how I kind of lived, was contracted and ready to fight. I wasn't really a fighter, but I was in fight or flight all the time.
yeah.
So I don't know why I feel like I have to tell people like I wasn't ever actually in a fight. But yeah, no, and I love what you're saying because I had a little aha. Like I am so pro self-love, self-compassion, right? Like that's like first. But you're so right. if you are not aware, then you don't even realize when the anti self love narratives pop up. I work with people who don't understand that their inner voice is really negative, like more often than not. So you're so right. If you can't look at yourself and hear the thoughts that are coming up, you're never going to be able to address them.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to be brave to do that. Definitely, because a lot of people, I work a lot with limiting beliefs, for example. And I always say the first thing you've got to do is make a person aware that they have limiting beliefs. Secondly, they've got to be prepared to admit they have them after they become aware, because a lot of people don't want to admit it. They just say, no, that's just
Right.
the way I am. That's not a belief. That's all nonsense, And
Mhm.
it's interesting what you're saying there about the negative self-talk, because if most of us heard what someone else say, what we say about us, we'd be really angry with that person, but we tend to just let ourselves get away with it, and it
Well,
doesn't make
worse than
sense.
that, we use that as a source of motivation.
Mm,
You know, like the hustle culture very much capitalizes on every negative thing that you feel about yourself. It's using that masculine energy to be like, come on, loser, one more, one more, one more. Like, baby, no, you're not a loser and your arm hurts. Stop, But like, there are industries capitalizing on the fact that they can get you to hate yourself a little bit more and disguise it as motivation.
mm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. Because we do live in this world where it's stimulated by fear and desire to make us buy things, and it just
Yep,
comes from everywhere. There's
everywhere.
no getting away from that. And like you say, yeah, it's there's an industry trying to get you, yeah, to hate yourself if you like.
Mhm.
Because I was raised with the belief that you have to work really hard to be successful. And there's a lot of successful people out there who are not working that hard. That
Right.
there's certain times when they give a lot of energy to it, but not as hard as people laboring on a lower pay or
Right.
whatever. And I played a lot of football and a lot of sport, which is soccer, I suppose, to you. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, the motivating factor from all the coaches was, oh yeah, you're a great player, but you need to work on this, your weakness all the time, using that as a motivation. So the way we're then conditioned, we're going to take this into adult life, right?
Right. Well, and the way I kind of view it is it transforms into being fueled by spite, because either you're internalizing all of that messaging either way, but you will either try to prove them right or try to prove them wrong, period. And so when we get into that mind space, we are truly motivated and fueled by spite versus anything that's ever going to actually nourish you as a human being. When we get into a place where we lean into fear and shame, however sneaky those shame narratives may be, they are there. And then we are only acting or reacting from those places and not from a place of empowerment, because we know who we are. We know that we're valuable. We know that we're worthy and we love ourselves. And we offer ourselves compassion, meaning we fully understand that we can be 100 different things making up this one beautiful spirit, and all of it matters, all of it has equal weight, and none of it matters to anyone else, and you just got to tend to you. Or I know for me, I used to talk about this a lot on my show. I don't I guess the conversations haven't steered that direction in a minute, but just about, when I was raised in such a toxic family system that, like, my I was raised primarily by my grandma, and so my aunts and uncle came to our house for all the functions, whatever, and it was such a toxic family system that even as a very small child, there were a lot of negative comparisons made between my cousins and myself, my siblings and myself, my mom and her siblings, whatever, and they would say some really mean stuff to me. And I took all of that and I was like, good, good. I will show you I am not those things, or that I'm not going to become those things, or whatever. I did not know how to receive discipline or motivation to do, achieve, be without having to try to prove one of them wrong. And that's like a really good example of being fueled by spite.
Yeah, because it's again, it's this fear-based motivation, isn't it? It's not a case of I want to get there. It's more of a case I want to get away from here. So it's
Yes.
like a get away from sort of goal rather than a move towards. So it's again, it's a fear-based, and I don't think you'll ever do your best work like that
No.
in that energy. I wouldn't say. And yeah, with that negative self-talk, it's like what you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. I think that's the most important conversation you're ever having.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
some of the best conversations you're ever going to have in life are going to be with yourself. So why not make them positive ones? And again, this is just a practice though, isn't it? It's the
Right.
practice. It's never going to be, you're never going to perfect it, I don't think.
Right. And I wonder if that was like as hard for you to just like finally understand as it was for me, because I got so excited in my healing, so excited. And oh my gosh, I can handle anything, which is true, right? But like there's going to be like a whammy of stress that you just weren't anticipating, and you're going to, it's, you have to use the tools that you've accumulated along the way. And I got so frustrated with myself for having to use the tools. Like I was like, oh, it should just be automatic where this happens, I respond beautifully and perfectly, and then look at that and pat myself on the back. I mean, I was devastated. And then I was like, okay, okay, you have to you had to use the tools. Who cares? Like that's what the tools were for. You created this whole toolbox so that you could carry it with you and pull it out at any time. But I just wonder, I like to ask people that because I see it a lot with my clients too. I'll tell them like, you're judging your healing again. But did you go through a phase where it was like hard to accept that, oh, there's never going to be a time I'm perfect at this?
Yeah, I think so. I think like yeah, you hear it all the time. There's no finish line to personal growth, but there's one thing understanding that intellectually, there's another thing emotionally understanding it,
Yes.
and yeah, I think you kind of think I'm getting all this gains from personal growth and whatever it is, but there will reach a point where I don't feel stressed or I don't get problems, but that is just an illusion. I think you're always
Yeah.
going to get it. It just comes down to how you deal with it. And
Mm-hmm.
you get better at dealing with it, I would say. And the more confident you get, you're probably going to get more stress and more challenges because depending on what your goals are,
Yeah.
you're possibly going to invite more problems. But again, it comes down to your ability to handle it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree 100%. It's tricky because I mean, I don't know if it's capitalism or just the way we were raised or what, but we do kind of live our lives in this trajectory, at least one that we create in our own paradigm, and there's always like an end goal, where when you're talking about becoming, there's not really an end. And yes, you can intellectualize that, but the reconciling happens every single time it comes up where you're like, again, I'm dealing with this again. Yes, you're dealing with it again because you're a human who's going to experience a number of different things throughout every one of your days. And learning how to be centered in who you are every minute of every day is pretty tricky. And you're gonna have moments where you're like, oh, I forgot who I was there for a second. Okay. There are certain people who are going to shake your confidence a little more than someone else, like it's going to happen no matter who you are. There is someone on this earth that can come and give you a good little second of self-doubt. It's always going to happen. And then it's what you do with that second of self-doubt that matters.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And yeah, I love what you're saying on your Instagram. I'm just reading it now. Helping people find their light, direction, and hope. I like the word there because you haven't said my or there's a blueprint. It's individual. Is that what you're trying to say there?
I think so. Yeah. You know, as I evolve, everything I'm doing evolves, and I feel this connection to humanity in a way that I never did because I wasn't connected to myself. I was just this like brain walking around nonstop thinking and not knowing how to feel anything. And I think I see the me in everyone and see the we in all of us. And I've always viewed like I have a personal self and a collective self, and I think I see everybody else that way too, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think I'm trying to just I'm doing pretty much the same thing you are, trying to get people to know who they are, just accept it, accept who you are, like it's fine. But I think even that has evolved even more. Like as you reach higher levels of consciousness of who you are and the world is around you, it's easier to see, oh, okay, that's I thought I knew what that meant, but now I know it in a totally different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, it's understanding how we learn as well, because again, the school system hasn't taught us how to learn. Like for instance, we learn through repetition, we learn through feelings. That's how we emotionally understand things. But school would teach us to read the book, get graded questions in the book, and then move on to the next book. But the contents of that first book couldn't possibly be understood in one, reading type thing. So th this repetition is how we learn. That's how we respond to our name and things like that. Our name was thrown at us over and over and over again. So
Mhm.
again, the reason I bring this up is because when people get frustrated because they want to go wherever their goals are, whatever they want to do, but they try it the first time and it doesn't work out, you've got to keep doing it over and over again. The repetition of becoming that new person because they could be in their role that they don't like at the moment. They're good at it, but they don't like it. It doesn't serve their
Right.
purpose. It's draining them. But because they emotionally understand it, they're almost comfortable there, even
Yeah.
though they're being called to do something else. So it's a big clash. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of growth as well.
Oh yeah.
When we talk about awareness, I mean, we're born with no awareness. So that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That, I see with my daughter as well, she's becoming more and more aware with every year. I wouldn't have noticed that with my son, but
Right.
she's growing physically, but, spiritually as well, more awareness. And
Mhm.
I don't think that ever stops, really.
I hope not. I mean, I think that we can limit our own potential at all times, but yeah, I think that was a real big revelation too. Like, oh, because when I feel awareness, it is a whole paradigm shift. Like the hugest aha moment. And I didn't know that you could experience so many of those, especially like I'm 44. Like I mean, I understand the midlife crisis. I really do, because when you get hit in the face with the fact that you've spent a large majority of your life not the way you wanted to spend it, and certainly not the way you want to continue to spend it, the awareness that comes with that and the things that you have to do to overcome every version of yourself that got you here, which is a beautiful thing, and I celebrate every version of me that got me here. But I had to teach all of them as I got here and as I go forward what kind of life we're looking for, because my brain, like everybody else's, is not designed for feelings. It's designed to keep me safe. And the way that it does that is by being incredibly hypervigilant and looking for every worst case scenario that could ever happen. And it also goes 10 steps further and says, if it can happen, it will happen. It will certainly happen to me. So, like, those are things that I have to overcome every single day because it is instinct. I have an extensive history of trauma from childhood, and it will always be the natural instinct for my brain to say, oh, that's dangerous. That's outside of our comfort zone. You have to walk away from that. And then it's up to me to know that my brain just said that and then talk to myself, both my brain and my inner child, and be like, hey, this is what we're doing, and everybody's safe. And thank you for trying to protect me, but we're good and we're going to keep going. But, every age prior to now certainly didn't have an understanding of any of that. Certainly wish they did, but it is all a whole new world every single day because there's always new opportunities to practice all of these things because the world is full of a lot of stress.
Mhm. And if you weren't self-aware, you would have no idea of what you just said
None.
there. You would have just
Mm-mm.
gone, say you got a fear of public speaking, use that as an example. You would just say, well, it's just the way I am. But
Just the way I am.
because you're aware, you're like, something happened in the past or whatever that is causing me to feel this way. Like, why can one person stand on stage in front of millions of people and talk calmly and confidently and another person can't, you know? And it's just the ideas that are fixed in their subconscious mind. That's the only difference. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
which, a lot of those ideas are outdated ideas from what was programmed into us when we were children. So
Right.
and this is that awareness that I try to get across to as many people as I can, really. Say you have got a fear of public speaking, let's go with that example. A lot of people will say, well, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me, but that's the wrong question. It's like, what happened to me? That's the question. And when you start
Right.
asking that question, you could have been raised with the belief like no one likes a smart ass, or taught when you're spoken to, or you know anything like
Yes.
that. You're a
Mm-hmm.
chatterbox. All of those little throwaway comments a child can take on. They live in the mind, and then, like you say, you get to a certain age, and your mind starts identifying with that pain that's no longer
Yes.
occurring.
Yep.
That isn't presently occurring. That's
Right. And something I like to say a lot is that we as human beings do everything we can to avoid feeling because we are so afraid that it's going to feel the way it did that very first time, like that first betrayal, that first abandonment, that first loss, first rejection, the first time we felt neglected. Those are the wounds we're carrying. And anytime they got opened, they became bigger and yuckier. And so now, our instinct is to say, oh, I will feel that. If I allow it, that's what I'm going to feel. And so we do all of these really terrible things that are not good for us to avoid feeling when just sitting in the feeling for a few minutes has never done as much damage to me as all of the things that I did to try to avoid the feelings. But you are so right. You have to ask yourself the questions. How did I get here? Why does that make me so afraid? Because I don't know. I don't think there are very many people, like if we're using the public speaking as an example, I don't know very many people who the very first time they go to do that, whether they have the belief that it's just not for them or they're just terrified. I don't know very many people that don't go into that situation the first time feeling a little unsure at the least. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't believe that anyone is built for public speaking or not built for public speaking. You build yourself to get there. But like if you're a person who's so sure that it's not for you, why? Why are you so sure of that? What is the fear? First of all, fear of being seen? Or are you walking around with that narrative that I had? I'm too much and not enough all at the same time, you know? But it took a lot of discovery to even be able to hear that I thought that I was too much. I didn't know I thought I was too much, or that I had internalized that so much from the comments of others. Again, self awareness. You're so right. I mean, you have to ask yourself the hard stuff, answer it honestly, and then there's always a little way that you can trace the answer back to some sort of childhood event, usually, and then you understand where it came from.
Yeah. Because the feeling of fear is like it's so frightening that if you don't understand why it exists and where it comes from, you will run away from those situations or avoid them.
Hmm.
And some fear is good, like I have a fear of snakes, I'm happy with that one. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, not sad about it at all. Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And like I say, like my friend likes parachuting. I don't, so I'm happy with that one. But the different, so let's use that as another example. What makes him not afraid of it and me afraid of it? Again, we got different ideas, and that's
Right.
the only difference because
Hmm.
I think of like the football changing room as well. Like you'll ask one player, how are you feeling about the game? They'll say, oh, I'm buzzing, I'm excited. You ask a younger player, how are you feeling about the game? I'm really nervous. And I've kind of come to the conclusion now that the vibration they're feeling is very similar, but it's the idea, one
The
person,
interpretation of it,
yeah,
yeah.
one saying I'm excited, the other one's I'm nervous, and therefore attracting all of those thoughts. We talk about the negative self-talk before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, what is excited versus nervous? They're really the same thing. And it's the meaning that you are attaching to it. Where did the meaning come from? You know?
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I call my book "Who the Hell Are You?" because
Yeah, that it looks awesome.
I read I got the title because I read a line that went, "It's never too late to be who you really are."
Mm,
So at the time, I just moved a couple of limiting beliefs out the way. Didn't realize I had them. My life improved. So when I read that line, I was like, "Yeah, who the hell am I?" So I did a lot of
yeah,
self-awareness, a lot of personal growth and self-discovery, and I put all my findings in there, you
I
know.
love that.
Yeah, because a lot of us we're not aware of our potential. And like you say, we down talk ourselves when we got so much potential that we could achieve.
Mhm.
I think, that's why the vision for my business is a world where all people use their creative power to make a positive impact because we are creative beings, as we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier. We've got this, and that could be creating a business, that could be creating a family life at home, whatever it is. In my opinion, success is personal.
Right.
But then a lot of people won't even think about that or define their version of success.
Yeah, there are people who cannot say what they think success means to them, but it's not hard to figure out that they think it means X amount of money, X amount of belongings.
That's
You
right.
know, like that's pretty much if you can't give a very personalized answer to what success means to you, then you've got a lot of internalized baggage. But I agree with you 100%. And like creativity is something kind of new for me just in the last year. I was always one of those people that was like, oh, you creative people, and I also know, I don't know if you're into human design, but like I'm a generator. And so I've learned that I do better with a template because I'm not the creator of the template. I'm the person who can take the template and make it like my own and beautiful and big. But again, self-awareness, I had to learn that about myself. But I love creating a feeling, creating an environment, creating actual products. I mean, I'm working on, workbooks and stuff now, and that's not stuff I ever thought I could do before. But as I've grown aware of myself, I really understand my energetic cycles and I understand the way my brain works really well. And I know exactly how to work with myself and not against it. And man, I read recently or saw or something that resistance really is what keeps you stuck. Like the more you just lean into whatever it is in front of you, instead of like, oh, I shouldn't, I should, you shouldn't, you should, all of those things, and just being like, okay, what do I really have right in front of me? What, not not past or future, right here. the actual thing in front of me. How can I work with this thing? Now I have to check in with my energy. Am I tired? Am I a little grumpy? Do I need food? Do I need, a rest? What do I need? Putting all of those things together, then you can create whatever it is that maybe you're a writer, maybe you're a singer, maybe you're a songwriter, or maybe you just play guitar, like you're not like writing and whatever. You play instruments, whatever it is, it's all creating something, and you are the master of that universe. So you get to create your own reality, kind of what we were talking about in the beginning. But if you have no awareness, you have no blueprint for how to create that reality.
Mm. And it's funny as well because the answer's right in front of us. Like every material item in the world came from the imagination.
Yes.
It came
Yes.
from, it was everything you see was just one idea in one person's mind at one particular time that they, again, like we say, raise yourself to the surface, express more of your personality. These are the unseen things like we're all essentially the same when it becomes physically, if you put us all into a fire, we'd all be reduced to the same level, for example.
Right.
But what makes us different is that inner side of us. No one knows how far that extends to. So
Right.
artists are brilliant at this, I've got a painting of a bee, for example, So if I look at the artist there, I can see that she's got blonde hair, she, is this tall and whatever. I can see all of that. I can visually see it. But what I couldn't see was that bee until she expressed it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be the obvious ways to be creative. I think, like you said, creating is internal, and whatever it is that you create within yourself, you're going to express outwardly. So if you're creating a toxic environment of a bunch of negative self-talk, what you express will be very toxic. But if you're creating an environment where you feel safe in your body and you understand that human beings weren't designed to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders or to be perfect. When you can understand that and you cultivate love and peace within, that's what comes out of you.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And to be honest, I think that is an excellent way to sort of end this podcast. So thank you very much. You've been a great guest.
Absolutely.
Where can we find you online?
An easy way is at melissa.hepner on Instagram or empoweredwithmelissahepner.org.
Brilliant. And we'll have all of your links in the description.
Awesome. Thank you
So
so much for having me on. I've had a great time.
yeah, no problem at all. Thank you.
Uh huh.